Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Palava Hut. Today, we have a very, very exciting guest because my guest, John, is from Burundi. And as a Liberian, I don't really meet a lot of Burundians often. So I'm excited to learn from John, his journey. And this Palava Hut episode it's through my brand Talia Inasia, my clothing brand that I created to ensure that we are sharing our version of Africa with the world, reclaiming the history, reclaiming the narrative. And we as Africans believe that we should tell our own stories. And so we're doing just that here in the Palava Hut. John, welcome to Talia Inasia. Thank you for the opportunity to chat with us. So if you don't mind, just give me a short introduction of yourself so that our audience can get to know you a little bit.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here, inviting me. I appreciate that. And my name is John Manirakiza. I was born and raised in Burundi, that is Central East Africa. Grew up there half of my life, and then the other half was spent outside of Burundi, South Africa, Swaziland, Mozambique, and here. And I live here, work mostly in the food industry. I'm a farmer. I own I'm working on a 5 acres farm where I develop African vegetables.
That's amazing. That's exciting. So what does your last name mean?
Manirakiza, Mana, Imana in Kirundi, our native language, is God. Irakiza, God saves, you can say God provide wealth, God is the healer, God is gracious. They are kind of like a different ways you can call it, but in a way, God is the center of my life.
That's
Yes.
amazing. That's so amazing. So, so your journey before coming to the United States, what was life like in Burundi? Like, what was family life like? What was it like growing up in Burundi, especially in a landlocked country?
Yeah, definitely living in Burundi, and this will surprise most people because we are inland and landlocked. We had a very good climate. Most of the time it's like a spring all the time, except for a couple of months in July to September where it's hot and but most of the time it's really the temperatures or the environment is very good. And then we also have the fact that Burundi, being away from a lot of the noise and stuff, we had let's say society in Burundi is pretty much what you would imagine a society that is mostly communitarian, where these things about, and I think it is common to most African cultures, a child is grown, is raised by the village, so you didn't make a difference between your parents and other parents, and they didn't make a difference between their children and other people's children. They were almost like always raising each other's children, and so there's no daycare there.
Exactly. Everybody is helping out.
Yes.
I love that.
So that becomes like you have many people who are actually involved in your raising up, and if you get out of the line, somebody will sit and they'll discipline. So there's no. So it was a very innocent and good African type of life.
I love that.
Yes.
So do you have kids?
I do have one daughter.
Okay, and do you feel like your daughter is missing out on that communal type of approach to raising your children?
Not really, because she's back in Burundi right now.
Okay, that's great. That's awesome.
Yeah, but I think in a way society's evolved in a way. The fact that we in most African communities were very collective in terms of like how they do things. Now the whole world has moved into like a more capitalist, more individual based type of development, and the new generation, that's how pretty much they see the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where exactly did you grow up in, or were you born in Burundi?
I was born in Bujumbura, the capital city, which is a very beautiful city. It's on the lake, Lake Tanganyika. Lake Tanganyika is I think, the deepest and maybe longest lake in Africa, which is bordered by Burundi, DR Congo, Tanzania, and Zambia. So we share that lake, but it's I grew up there, and like I say, it was a beautiful childhood.
Beautiful.
Yes.
So, and then you spent time in Burundi, and what led to your migration out of Burundi?
In '93, there was a war that started in Burundi, civil war, and I was by the time I was studying at the University of Burundi, and I didn't fit into the war or conflict because I didn't believe in it. That was based on the fact that tribes, or at least the two main tribes in Burundi, Hutus and Tutsis, it started with an assassination of a president, and then there was a lot of killing of innocent people. Then the civil war started like that. And then as a student, I think I always was into passing. I was a soccer player. I was an athlete, and as an athlete, I've had a kind of like a philosophy that is more cooperative, less conflicts. Because you, as an athlete, and by passing as an issue of like we always play 11 players, and all the 11 players, we were from different backgrounds. You know, in fact, the city where I grew up, we had all people from all kinds of backgrounds. There were Lebanese, there were Palestinians, there were Burundians, the people from Congo, the Tanzania.
In '93.
In '93.
They had that much diversity.
We had that diversity in
That's
where
amazing.
I grew up.
Yeah,
So
that's
the
amazing.
people I grew up with were from like different countries. And all of a sudden there's a civil war that says, you know, it's a Hutu Tutsi war. People are going to kill. I mean, people are killing innocent people because and so I was one of the people who didn't believe in that, and I still don't. And then that they create problem for me. They'll be like, you gotta take a position.
Wow.
You can't, you know, it's a war. You either on this side or that side. And I was like, what are we fighting for again?
That's bold. That's bold. That's really audacious. What are we fighting for in a time of chaos?
Right. So that got me trouble. So I couldn't make any friends because people wanted me to join their side, and I was like, I don't know if I'm ready to die for something I don't understand.
Wow.
You know, and then so that created incidents where really my life was in danger.
Wow.
You know, at one time, there were people who really wanted to kill me. If it wasn't by the grace of God, somebody say, why you want to kill an innocent person? What did he do to you? Then after that, I decided to just leave the country.
Okay.
So I left the country, went to Swaziland, and then South Africa, and then spent about 3 years there before coming here.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Earlier we were talking about the construct between the Hutus and the Tutsi, the two different, I guess from my perspective and from what I've studied about the Burundian war, it was like two ethnic groups, right? But then from a Burundian, you were saying, first of all, we all speak the same language. It's not ethnic groups. It's just a societal construct. Can you speak a little bit to that?
So before Germany colonized Burundi, let's begin with the Conference of Berlin. Because the Conference of Berlin, that's where Germany their part of the cake was Tanzania, Burundi, and Rwanda. and then I think Cameroon and Togo and Namibia, some of those countries.
Mm-hmm.
So the Germans come in Burundi, and there was a long war actually before they actually conquer Burundi.
Wow.
The king of Burundi fought for 7 years before he surrendered. So there was a king in Burundi, and the king had these classes that they have established in like a Burundian traditional, let's say, society.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the aristocracy where the king is the top, and then he will make people who run different regions,
Mm-hmm.
the provinces, and then there will be people who are doing the real field work.
Mm-hmm.
So out of those classes, they were like people they would nominate. They would say these are the Tutsis who are the rulers, administrators, and the people who are doing field work and manual work, and they are the Hutus. But it was actually based on what do you call wealth.
Mm.
So
Wow.
yeah, and you could see how the king owns the whole thing, and the patronage system is like, okay, you're gonna run that region,
Mm-hmm.
and you're gonna run that region,
Mhm.
and you're gonna
Report to
to me,
Right.
and then these rulers, from which most of them they were saying that they are the Tutsis, they will also have servants. Among those servants, the people who are serving, they will be like the Hutus. So, because they were speaking the same language,
Mm-hmm.
it was difficult to distinguish who was who.
Okay. Okay. Interesting.
When the Germans came,
Mm-hmm.
they found some physiological difference.
Okay.
And they said, okay, you guys, the tall guys, and these are the short guys, so we're gonna do some ethnographic studies.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, oh, you look Nilotic, you look like Europeans, so
Mhm.
you are
Higher class.
higher class.
Right.
And then the other class, you are lower class.
Wow.
So they even got to a place where in Rwanda, they put it on the ID cards.
So the Germans put your, I guess your class you belong to on the ID card.
Yes.
Wow.
So these cards, people will be like, at the card, you were born in this place and that place. What is your ethnic group, Hutu or Tutsi?
So just sorry, but I want to go back a little bit to this naming, I guess, attribution
Mm-hmm.
started with this king,
Mm-hmm.
and then once the German came and they fought and eventually took over, they solidified this by, I guess, making it more formal.
Right.
Wow.
Right, yeah, they made it more formal so
Mhm.
that they even came up with ideas like usually they have like they say this is scientific research. We're gonna measure your height, your weight, your the scale and anything. They'll be like this is according to science. You are
Wow.
this group,
That's
and then we
amazing.
put it on a card. Then in Burundi, the king refused to put it on the card. Yeah, the king of Burundi, as opposed to Rwanda, the king of Burundi refused to put it on the card because he said, no. These things are about classifying people based on their physiological appearance.
Doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense to us, and
Yeah.
they are all Burundians.
Right.
And unfortunately, in Rwanda, for example, it was put on the card, and you see the genocide that happened in Rwanda.
Yes.
Not that in Burundi didn't happen like a conflict, but when you look at the things that happened in Burundi, there were a lot of even intermingling of these groups.
Mm-hmm.
My late dad is from the Hutu side, my mom is from the Tutsi side, and we never really even talk about it. They never even mention it, and only when the war started, that's where people started saying, who are you?
Wow.
who do you identify yourself as? I was like, I'm a Burundian. No, 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 no. You gotta go deep. You gotta find, what is your ethnic group? Otherwise, you are not one of us, or you are on the other side. And that's how I got in trouble.
Wow. So having those two defined ethnic, quote unquote, ethnic groups, Hutus and Tutsis, are there subgroups that exist that you would say there are other groups that existed separately to this, I guess, national construct that was created by the kings and then eventually solidified by the Germans?
Right. Yes, they were like clans.
Okay,
clans,
okay.
clans in Burundi, and if I'm not mistaken, sometimes they'll be based on profession. There are people who are like, okay, this clan is gonna be doing this type of work.
Okay.
Like now you would say, there are professional groups, there are medical people, there are lawyers, so some clans will be like, okay, this is our, or at least the king. And this, you're gonna have to do some more research because this is kind of me thinking like, okay, they decided this clan is gonna do this type of profession. This clan is gonna be that type of a profession. And because I say this because I worked with the Burundian drums, which is famous. It's a UNESCO globally acclaimed group.
Wow.
The drums of Burundi, and there was a certain group that can drum. It's not everybody.
So it's like this natural talent that is within certain clans, and then your clan gets identified by your talents. So your talents make room for you.
Right. So the king, I think, he would choose who, at least, was going to be because the drums, in a way, was a system of communication. It was not just an art and all. It was a way of communicating. People could actually drum in a way and send a message to the community.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, they'll be like, they know the tune of that drum, and this is meaning X, Y, Z. And so you're gonna watch some on YouTube of Burundian drums. They played in the Black Panthers, the Burundian drums.
Wow.
So.
And you manage that group, or you are associated with that group?
Yeah, I help. And this come as a one who's blessed with, let's say, God has blessed me with contact, and I would say I came here in '98. So part of me, I think, is part of the raising, the culture. I always find myself in a position to help other people. It's not that I deserve to be the one doing it, but I just find myself in that position where people come, and my mom, just like when my family is asking too much of me, I say, Mom, everybody's calling me, and she'll be like, hey, be thankful they're calling.
It's part of your purpose. At least you have a purpose.
At least they're calling you.
Exactly.
Do you know how many people don't get that call? And she will turn to me and I look at it as if
it's a blessing. Like, why don't you feel grateful?
So when refugees from Burundi came in 2008. A lot of the refugees have come from countries in Tanzania and DR Congo, where when they got here, they had so many problems. They don't speak English. They have never been to school. They're coming here in a country where there's a really, really big culture shock.
Yes, absolutely.
And so sometimes, by me being out, my name get out, and then I get a call. Like, hey John, you from Burundi, right? Yes. And then this is at night. Oh wow. We have an issue. There's a person who's from Burundi. They only speak Kirundi, and they need your help.
Wow.
And they will be. I'll be in a position where I can't say no.
Yeah. Yeah.
But part of it, getting to know the problems of these refugees, because I've been a refugee myself, so I'm like, I understand where they come from, and it's the little I can do, the least I can do to help. So one of those was in Atlanta. There's a group, Clarkson, Atlanta. There was a group of refugees,
Mm-hmm.
uh, like in many instances in society where young people are disconnected. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so you imagine a young person, 16 years old, 17 years old, plucked out of Africa,
Mm.
brought into Atlanta, and then they're like, make your life happen.
That's tough.
Tough,
That's tough.
very tough. Sooner or later, they hook up with the other young people born here who are also disconnected in a way, and in the group.
Yes.
So trouble start there, because most young people, I would say I've worked with a lot of young African Americans here. They are disconnected. They have no kind of reference, and then they get
From
end
a
up
cultural
from
perspective.
a cultural perspective, but also society here. I mean, young black people live in neighborhoods most of the time, like where they don't have the amount of support they need to have, and then that's why they end up in jail, most of them. So we start getting these calls like, oh, this young Burundian is involved in gangs and is doing drugs and all that stuff. And so as we were trying to figure out what do we do, we found out that one of the leaders there had a group of dramas, Burundian dramas. So I say, oh wow, that could be one thing. It's a cultural thing, because these kids are disconnected. They need to connect with their culture.
Yes. Yes.
At least that could be one thing that we can actually do. So they started drumming,
Mm-hmm.
and then when I found out about their drumming skills, I connected with them.
Mm-hmm.
We started doing some kind of like a tour. They came to George Washington, they came to Baltimore, and they were doing contests. Like when you have cultural groups doing competition, they were always like number one or number two.
That's amazing. And so that's the same group that ended up drumming
Yes,
in the
that's-
Black Panther.
Yes,
That's
the same
amazing.
group. Yes.
So, I love what you said about the importance of like that impact of being disconnected. So when I started my clothing brand, in addition to just like having beautiful clothes, which I'm like wearing one of our shirts here, it's really want to reestablish that connection to community, to home, and for me, home is Africa. But I have my African American friends that I love so much, and I know there's a craving to establish that identity because they lack thereof here. Like they were literally plucked out of the continent, right? Without any, permission, forced into, like you said, out of circumstances. I mean, that was a much dire like slavery, but out of circumstances, plucked and just dropped here, and then over generation, there is, because we are meant to be connected to community, right? It's important for us to know our origin and who we are and where we came from. And so, I say all of that to say I started this, initiative and this endeavor to really allow our African American brothers to see that the continent is a part of who they are. We want them to come to the continent. We want them to discover that root, because it's important to kind of know where you come from, to be able to move forward in your life and be able to really establish where you're going to go. And I think we as Africans who are connected to the continent is part of our journey, and I think it's a moral responsibility to establish a space where our African American brothers can feel comfortable to go back and know where to start for that self-discovery process. What are your thoughts on that?
No, it's important, of course. I mean, this idea of being disconnected is something that we need to kind of re-engage people into, like the culture. Culture is important. Like I said, when I grew up in Burundi. Our society was such that they provided for me an environment where I wouldn't feel unsafe because I knew that the whole community was like rooting for me.
Family.
The family, the uncles and people, everybody. Not that it was perfect.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have money. We didn't even think about it, about
Mm-hmm.
money that most of the time, because it was like, it was not a society that is based on money. It was based on what we call Ubuntu in the Burundi is actually deeper, because they said the Ubuntu in Burundi,
Mm-hmm.
it's a destination. You get to be a human being by the way you act.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. So they'll be like, one day you're gonna be a human being, but they'll be like, if you don't do that, you will not be considered a human being.
So you define your own position in society by your actions.
By your actions, and
Beautiful.
you knew what was ethical was not ethical, and for a long time we didn't have police in Burundi. Because everybody knew how to behave and what to do. But, when there was some type of discipline, you've heard about it in Africa, you misbehave in class, you're going to get it from the teacher, you're going to get it from your parents.
Before you get home, like 3 aunties have given it to you already. Oh, I heard you were acting up. Okay, all right, I got something for you.
Yeah. So by the time you get home, you already learned the lesson.
Yes.
Not to mean that it was perfect, but the idea of connecting is very important, because most of the time people they lack a reference. They in a way we run into materialistic lifestyle, because that's the only thing that is like something that they can.
It's tangible.
Tangible.
Yes.
Yeah, and then once you don't have those type of reference of like a culture that you say you serve more, and then you help more people, and then you get help, and then you move. So that's important in terms of like people connecting with that culture, and knowing that it's not all about material stuff. Because this sometimes we get into this society, and we end up believing that same thing.
I mean, as Africans, like, it suddenly becomes about what I can acquire, right?
Yes.
Whereas when you were on a continent, it was more so like, how can I build a community? How can we each like grow together and evolve together to ultimately reach a higher purpose?
Right. Yeah.
So that's beautiful. So growing up in Burundi, what was your favorite food? When like your mom made, you were like, yes, mom, I am on cloud 9 today. What was your favorite food? I want you to give us a little bit. I've never tried Burundian food, so I'm interested to know, and you need to tell me where I can get it.
Sure. So there's a fish out of Lake Tanganyika called it's a mukeke. So because we are by the lake, my home is basically walking to the lake is 30 minutes.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
Yeah. And then our main food is the anchovy type of fish and cassava fufu. That was like the staple of like most of Bujumbura, because we are by the lake. Most of us we ate like a cassava and the fish. When you don't have what you love, you end up loving what you have. So we didn't get a lot of meat.
And so how would you make the fish to eat it with the cassava fufu?
They either fried it or they mix it with vegetables. There are a lot of vegetables there that we mix it with, and then you basically use the fufu to grab the piece of. My heart is, but we have so many problems that we need to fix, and also a country that comes out of a war, and then you continue with crisis and poverty and crisis and poverty. To be quite honest, you're not gonna say that it's the best place to be when there's so much poverty, so many problems that are unsolved. For a child who's born there now, they are born in a very, very tough situation.
Wow.
Yeah, but hopefully they will solve it.
So you just spoke about the problems that exist, but what are some opportunities in Burundi, like from a economic standpoint or from a business perspective? If somebody wanted to come to Burundi to start a business, or was interested in going to Burundi, what would you say to them about the different opportunities in Burundi?
Depending on the person's interest, Burundi is a very touristic place. I mean, the tourism has never been developed as they should, because we are by the lake.
Mm-hmm.
And then where I grew up, it was not on the mountain, but there was a range of mountains just like facing the lake.
Mm-hmm.
Very beautiful. In fact, when my mom used to have a piece of land where we went to farm, which was on a hill or facing the lake. Even though I didn't like to go to farm, and to my surprise, now I'm a farmer.
Mm-hmm.
I used to climb on the mango trees basically to get the mangoes, and then look at the view of the lake. It was the most amazing, the most splendid view that I can say. And tourism, there's agriculture is still like the countries, and probably they're gonna have to change the way they grow food, because it's a small country, very dense.
How many people, population-wise?
About 12 million.
Okay.
I mean, it's the size of Maryland. It's very small.
Sorry, but so of 12 million people, everyone speaks Kirundi.
Yes.
Wow.
At least everyone who claims to be Burundian, because they were also kind of like we had a lot of people from Congo, Tanzania, whose first language is Swahili.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So,
yes.
but most of the native Burundians, they speak the language.
Kirundi.
In fact, they just changed that. Even the office now, the administrative language is going to be Kirundi.
Wow.
Yes.
I love that. I love that, because there are some African countries where, unfortunately, the national language isn't, indigenous
Mm-hmm.
language. So I really love that. But what are one or two traditions that you think the world should know about Burundi? Like, what are some key things you're like, if I had an opportunity, I would love to share this with any and everyone, because I think this is so special about Burundi.
Traditions. That's interesting. There's so many traditions, and to be quite honest with you,
Mm-hmm.
growing up in an urban area,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get as much into the Burundi traditions or customs as I should.
Mm-hmm.
But to look at what happens, like there's no social security there,
Mhm.
so people are always like by virtue of living together, they kind of like create a whole social security system.
Really?
Depends on your community. So let's say, okay, it happens even here when we have an incident in the community where, okay, somebody dies in the family is poor, they don't have money, the whole community will come and then be like bringing stuff so that they can finish with the funerals. They also help them like after the funeral, look after the family, because even they lost their parents, and that will be like part of like something that is there. Somebody have to do a wedding, they don't have the means, the community will come and it will be like, okay, we're gonna help the person get where they want to go in this particular. So there's like an informal social security system that is being created by society.
I love that.
Yes.
I love that. So you talked about being a farmer earlier.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about how you got into that, what you're currently doing, and how does that link back to the work you're doing in Burundi?
The farming started with my work with refugees. There was a group of refugees that was settled down here in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and as we were trying to help as much as we could, as members of a community who have been here longer, they expressed the idea, the need for food, vegetables that they were familiar with. Number one.
So Burundians who had migrated here
As
started
refugees.
as refugees wanted access to vegetables and things that they were accustomed to.
Yes.
Okay.
That would be like callaloo, that would be like African eggplant, I think in West Africa, someplace they call jakato or bita ball.
Beta boy, yeah.
Bita
Call it
ball,
beta boy.
and yeah, mostly vegetables that we're familiar with, they were familiar with. Then as I started looking at how to help this community, I helped them find a plot. I connected them with the community that provided them a piece of land where they can do that. And then I myself began to help them because I was like the translator and also cultural broker.
So what were you doing before you embarked on this farming journey?
I was working in a credit union.
Okay.
I did work in a corporate environment. But then it was the refugees' need for food, for better food, healthy food, that got me going to help them. And then over the time, I discovered that it was not only refugees, but healthy, fresh food was not really something we take for granted here. There are a lot of people who don't have it.
Yeah.
And then I started kind of like looking at working with the University of DC, District of Columbia. We were actually focused on migrants and people from Africa and the Caribbean. And then in the pandemic, I started a 5 acres piece of land, farming project in Upper Marlboro. And all the time I kind of focus on that group, because in the process I discovered that it is a group that by nature of being migrants, people have so much to do, and they don't really even look for where the resources are. And they don't claim things, because it's not the nature of the immigrant to claim stuff, They'll be like, I can work 3 jobs or 4 jobs.
They don't want to be a liability.
They don't want to be a liability, but
or they lack the knowledge. Which one?
It's a both.
Okay.
It's the lack of awareness that they are paying taxes.
Yes.
So the resources that are out there, public resources, they should serve them, right?
Yes.
But also there is the image, and we have to talk about it as immigrants. We project an image of success back home.
Yeah.
Where we also don't want to show ourselves vulnerable. So if I go ask for help, it means that I'm not successful. So we prefer to kind of like suffer in silence. And so you find out that a lot of people, even in food insecure areas, there are a lot of immigrants. Because that's where they can afford housing.
Yeah.
And where there's low income housing, that's where they are.
Yeah.
But they can't, and this is kind of me saying, I've seen it, where people refuse to acknowledge their vulnerability, need for help, because it goes against that image of like, as an immigrant, I'm successful, I have money, because Western Union get all our money, you send it over.
Remittances every month.
They have a choice in terms of their nutritional, the food they eat.
So, yeah.
And also it has double kind of purpose, because in the African communities at the same time we tend to, I would say, people are not aware of the food of the other people. A friend of Ghanaian friend
Yeah.
he like to tells me, when all you know is your mother's cooking, you think the other mothers don't know how to cook.
Not to cook. Yes.
So
Yes.
that becomes something that really beauty people get. You know, they'll be like, I like my fried chicken. I don't.
I have a friend, I love her to pieces,